What's up, guys? Chaz and Charlie. And today I want to discuss, why is weed a badge of honor? I released a video this week entitled "The Boy Who Died from Weed," and it was about a young man who smoked weed, a lot of weed, and ended up dying for complications due to CHS. And his mother cremated his body, and she keeps his ashes and a urine in her room with a marijuana leaf on the urn, which I feel like that was sort of outrageous. And it just made me think, I thought this before anyway, why is weed so different that we, make it a badge of honor? We almost are proud to say we smoke a lot of weed. Of all the addictions, whether it's alcohol or drugs or narcotics, most alcoholics are not going to wear a shirt that say, "I love beer" or "I love liquor," or a shirt with a pint of beer on it. Not saying it doesn't happen, but it's not the norm. Person that's on narcotics, he's not going to wear a t-shirt with a needle on it or 2 opioids on the shirt, or say, "I love opioids." And you may say that because, okay, weed is not as severe as these other drugs or alcohol, and it's a herb, it's a drug, it's a plant, it heals, it's great, but point blank, it's still a drug. It's still used for medicinal purposes. And I think the word medicinal, people think it sounds better. It's medicine. And I've said that medicine is great. Weed can be a great alternative medicine if you're trying to not take pharmacia or not take what doctors prescribe, if you can, but it's still a medicine. And no medicine, whether it's natural or herb or made in a laboratory, is designed to be taken every single day for your lifetime. No medicine, no matter how great it is designed for you to continuously take it. Although people do tend to, get on medication and stay on it. I think in a lot of cases, there's an alternative in your life that you can change, that you can naturally cure these things where you no longer need the medicine. If you're using weed for sleep, find out why you're not sleeping and try to eliminate that. You can use weed for a short period of time to go ahead and just get you some sleep, but we shouldn't just stop there. We should find out why we're not sleeping and try to solve the problem where we're not using the outside source to actually go to sleep. If we are, having anxiety, we're depressed, we have to still find out why we're depressed, why we have anxiety, to make a change rather than just continue to use weed every single day for the rest of your life. With any prolonged use of medicine, no matter how herbal or natural it is, it's still a medicine. And there are side effects for anything that you use for a long period of time. Sorry. But we tend to, like I said, abuse weed and kind of wear it as a badge of honor. I just contemplated on that mother who put a weed leaf on her child's urn, that supposedly the reason why he died because he smoked weed and had CHS. So you can say hold on, guys. Okay, if your son died from, you can say, weed per se, what would provoke you to put this emblem on his tombstone, you can practically say? And it's like I said, it's only with weed that we do these things. And you might can say maybe the mother just wasn't, playing with a full deck of cards. Because she also said that her daughter, the sibling, chose that because she was like, he would love that on his earn. I'm sure he would, but I mean, the outside looking in, you're his mother, you know that, it's what killed him. Like, why are we still highlighting, weed? And it's crazy because she also was like, she was going to be an advocate for CHS and teens having this and trying to prevent kids from being like her son. But then you show an urn with a weed leaf on it, still really uplifting weedies. I find that silly, but we do that a lot with weed, and the majority of the time it's with weed. And what makes weed so much cooler than anything else? And then just because weed is this, and I'm kind of talking it through myself because now you're almost getting I'm talking my thoughts out of my head. Weed is this great drug, and we use it for medicinal purposes, so we want to publicly state our love for weed because it brings us so much joy. And it's one thing, to do what you do in privacy and feel one way about it, but only with weed. I'm not gonna say only with weed, but a lot of times with weed, we just do feel like we can publicly uplift it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nobody's gonna wear a shirt say "I love porn." They will probably look at you like you're crazy, and even though apparently, based on the numbers and statistics, Pornhub being one of the most visited sites in the world, a lot of folks love porn. But you don't see many people walking around with "I love porn" shirts. And they do love porn. So what makes weed different? What makes it so much greater that we feel like it's its own category, that it's okay to wear it as a badge of honor? And I once was, guilty of this. I remember when Facebook first started. This was, guys, it hadn't first started. It was in its early stages because at that time you still had to have a college email to be on Facebook. Some things that people actually don't know about, mostly old people. But anyway, and I had on there, I was a self-proclaimed weed head. And then at the time I was in a fraternity, and they were like, you need to take that off because that it's not a good look, basically. And I'm like, you can't tell me what to do. And weed is great, and I do love weed. I'm not afraid to say I love weed, but what makes us feel like that's cool? And I'm gonna say most people who uplift weed are not people who solely use it for as a medicine. Most people who use it just simply like using it because it gets you high, and we just love the feeling of being high. So we love it so much we feel like we're gonna uplift weed and make it this public spectacle, and not keep it to ourselves. So this is still something I'm just still studying and trying to figure out why weed is in its own separate category. No matter that it has been studies shown that even though it's, like I said, it's not as severe as alcohol or narcotics, but there are still side effects with prolonged use. It's a medicine, but it's a medicine. You're not putting on your shirt, "I love aspirin, I love Tylenol." So you can't use that analogy of "I love weed" because it's the most greatest medicinal thing ever given to man. I think we're just normalizing recreational weed use, and we don't want to say what it actually is. But this was just a brief discussion. I actually had something else completely different to talk about, and for some reason I forgot what that was. I guess some of my brain cells are still fried from all the years of smoking weed. So, what do you guys think? I know you may say, oh, some people, not all people, are publicly self-proclaimed weed heads. Some people wear a suit and tie and wear normal clothes and love weed. I get that. But if there's anyone to promote a vice, it's gonna be a weed head. I mean, I guess you may get some gamblers that may wear a shirt with some dice on it or a casino slot. I mean, they're probably gonna be 72 years old. But I mean, as far as the vice that covers the most ground of public acceptance is going to be weed. But maybe you feel differently. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. So until next time, guys, please like, subscribe, share. Most importantly, comment below. And remember, we are all in this together. Peace. What's up, guys? Chaz and Charlie. And today I want to discuss, just because you have a job or make money doesn't mean you don't still have a weed addiction problem. So since I made this channel, this has came up at certain times. Although I've never made claims that I don't think if you smoke weed every day, you can't work or you can't make a good source of income or you can't make a living. I've actually never made that claim. I don't believe that. And even in response to my last video, somebody commented, because I did the danger of weed addiction, where I use people, celebrities that have admitted to being addicted to weed, such as not Joe Rogan, but Logan Paul and Lady Gaga and Post Malone. So, I mean, obviously these people are rich and make a lot of money. Even somebody like Seth Rogen, who, promotes weed, obviously he makes there's obvious people who make a very good source of income and they smoke weed. So, I've never made that claim that you can't, make money by smoking weed. So people kind of kill me when, they say, well, I made $10,000 this week, or I made this month, and weed doesn't affect me. Okay, did I say that you can't make any money while smoking weed? That's not the issue. People can have many addictions and still make a lot of money. Hence, someone like Charlie Sheen, at the height of 2.5 Men, he was the highest paid sitcom actor in Hollywood, making over $1 million per episode. And he was on crack. So, I mean, something like weed, I'm very sure it's possible to make an income or a good source of income while you are I'll say, addicted to weed. Now, the issue is that the only qualifier to it's not an issue? Can you say that, oh, well, I got a good job and I'm maintaining my good job, so I don't really have an issue? That's just justification. If, like I said, that was one of the main qualifiers for any addiction, whether it's porn or gambling or this and that, then, I mean, by that logic, most people aren't addicted. It's not just because you, like I said, have a good job does not mean you can't have change in your life. And what I would say to that is, if you can make, let's say, $1,000 a week while you're smoking weed, think of what you could do if you was not smoking weed. That's not you saying, I do this while I smoke weed. Okay, that's good. That's fine and dandy. So are you saying that the reason you make this money is because you do smoke weed? Or do you smoke weed every day? Is that the reason you're making this? So if you're making that while you're smoking weed, if you didn't smoke, I'm sure you could make probably more. Because you'll have, because like what some people have said, like I believe it was George Janko who was on the video too, that they use weed, they think so much throughout the day, and your brain is going 1,000 miles a minute. Weed pretty much turns it off. So to get you some relaxation, and I'm not saying you shouldn't relax some part of the day. I don't think you should just work yourself 24/7 with no relaxation. But I also don't think you need weed to truly relax. I think you should be able to turn your mind off just by yourself without weed. And if you're smoking weed all day throughout the day, I think it's different. It's different if you perhaps smoke weed at the end of the day when you have done all your work and the day is over and you're just, smoking to end the night, sitting yourself to sleep. I think issues could still arise in that as well. But, okay, you make an argue that, okay, I do my work, I use weed once my work is over. But for those who are smoking throughout the day, starting in the morning time up until they sleep, which is a lot of people, I'm going to say if you smoke weed every day, in most cases you get to a point where you're smoking throughout the day. You're not just most people who... Hold on. Somebody wanted to... They saw me walking Charlie. They wanted to ask, do I want another dog? I told them my wife would kill me if I brought home another dog. I would kill myself if I brought home another dog. But anyway, if you smoke for a long period of time, I think most people can, if you smoke every day at nighttime and choose to do it every day, eventually you're going to get to a point where you smoke throughout the day. And you're constantly turning your brain off throughout the day. If you are this, money, this go-getter, this entrepreneur, I can see where that possibly could be affecting you getting more money. Like I said, if you want to use the logic that because I'm making a lot of money, I don't have weed is not an issue, then if you're so hyper focused on that being a qualifier of you not having an issue, think of what you could make if you didn't smoke with that logic. You probably would make more. And if you disagree with that, that means you would feel you're saying that me smoking weed is benefiting or reason for me making a lot of money, which I'm sure we all can say that's not a thing, unless you are somebody like Seth Rogen or Snoop Dogg, people who are entertainers and who have made weed a part of their identity and monetized it. I get that. But most of us are not Seth Rogen, we're not Snoop Dogg, we're not Cheech and Chong. So we have to work regular, everyday jobs. And men, there's probably more so men that say that than women. As men, we shouldn't also validate ourselves based on our occupation, our job, our income, which I know is hard to do. We as men, because we are the bread winners, we are the head of the household. We do gauge ourselves based on how much we make, what we do, and that's a big part of our identity. But even aside from weed, we're more than that. We are because we put so much focus on our monetary or occupational status, we don't value things like our emotional intelligence, our patience, our love, our kindness, our relationships. These things that are much more important, much more lasting than your job. So, although we shouldn't be lazy and we should support ourselves and support our families if we have those, I mean, just a job, just income. Is money out here to be made? Go make the money. But if we're still waking up smoking weed on our lunch breaks, smoking weed when we get home, using weed throughout the day, every day. Again, not people who simply just smoke weed rather for celebration or just every now and then, but people who have to smoke weed every single day. We can't deny we don't have an issue based on what job we have, based on how much money we make. And also, we're in a time now where jobs don't drug test. Back in the day, there was more of an issue with probably keeping a job or getting a job because we had drug tests, and you could fail drug tests. There may be periodic drug tests where you had to stay clean in case you get this surprise drug test. I'm sure they still exist in some sects of work or employment, but a lot of jobs now with states legalizing weed aren't even drug testing anymore. Even I know before I got my current job now, which was like at this point almost like 8-9 years ago, at that point they had stopped drug testing for a lot of jobs. I know one job for my transition warehouse job, I was at Nike and we got a drug test, and I'm like, I'm feeling like fail, and I'm feeling like at the job because I smoked weed this morning, and I smoke weed every day. But I took the drug test, and the girl said, okay, we are back with the bag of shit in my hand. She was like, you smoke a whole lot of weed. And I'm like, okay. She's like, and you can sit down, and I got the job. I'm like, okay, that was different. And again, there are many jobs that are not drug testing anymore. So you may feel like, okay, I'm not getting drug tested. That didn't affect me getting a job or keeping my job. So, it's not really an issue. Deep down, if it's an issue, no matter how much money you make, no matter what job you got, you may just be tired of feeling like you need weed to wake up. You need weed to go to sleep. You need weed to eat. You need weed to talk to people. You need weed to do anything. I felt like the idea of going to work and me not smoking and me not being high, I had to deal with people while I'm not high. So we may continue to smoke weed to say it helps us deal with folks while we're at work. Now, because we're using it to deal with people at work, does that still not mean we don't have an issue? I mean, we can just go on and on with the idea of what job you have, whether you have a weed addiction problem. We can go either way with that argument. But I'm tired of hearing how much money you make in trying to debate on whether weed is an issue. I don't care what money you make, and I never made a claim you can't make money while on weed. I just want to help those who struggle with trying to quit weed. But I don't know, guys. Maybe you feel different. Maybe you're one of those millionaires who smoke weed all day, every day, and it's not a big deal. I would like to hear from you. Please comment below. And if you're making $1 million, all this money, and you're choosing to comment on one of my videos where, I mean, I'm a person who might have like 10, 15 views, and you're wasting time to write a paragraph talking about how much money you make. You don't make that much money. You got time to sit here and write paragraphs defending your Wheaties on a guy that gets 15 views. But whatever. But until next time, guys, please like, subscribe, share. Most importantly, comment below. And remember, we're all in this together. Peace. Still have a bag of shit. What's up, guys? Charlie. And today I want to discuss success motivates sobriety. So when you're on your journey, you're quitting or you're trying to quit, in the beginning, it can be extremely tough. It's hardest in the beginning. We don't want to start because we know those first 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, you can say even first 6 months can be extremely hard. There you have your cravings, you're irritable, you don't have an appetite, you can't sleep, people making you mad at work, you're being stressed out. You have all these different factors that's pulling you back to revert back to your old ways, to take the edge off, to go back to weed, or go back to what started you. And again, the beginning can be extremely tough. And a lot of times we fail because we don't get past those first 2, 3 weeks, that first month. And we don't allow the success to motivate your sobriety. Because truth is, not only the longer you're sober, the easier it gets, but also the more you're motivated. Times when I was trying to quit, or I say I was trying to quit, I'll fall into the trap of being happy or being, proud of myself that I went, a week, 2 weeks without smoking. I'll say, I almost reward myself with weed because I did smoke, which is not what you want to do. And when you're, a weed head trying to quit and you're proud of yourself for not smoking for a week or two, you'll say, well, I did pretty good. I'm not addicted. I'll just start back smoking. And we fall right back into our cycle of addiction. But the longer we smoke, the easier it gets, and also that success motivates us to stay sober. When you get to that 6 months point, you'll say, I don't actually want to. I want to continue being sober because I've went so long, I've taken so far, I'm proud of myself. Let's see how much further I can go. And that just isn't with weed. That's with anything in life. When you actually see your growth, you see your success, you see your accomplishment, that motivates you to go further, to continue on your journey. And the longer you stick to it, the easier it gets, the more you're motivated. And that motivation does come in spurts. You're not going to be motivated every single day. Some days might be hard. Some days you might be weak. Some days you may say, I want to smoke today, or I need to smoke today, or I'm getting that urge. If we just wait it out, let it pass through, it really does subside. And especially usually with weed addiction, not saying women can't be addicted, but most weed addiction cases are us men, and we're very fickle creatures. We're very momentary. It's been kind of portray that women are the fickle ones, and women are the ones who are changing emotions with the sway of the wind. But we're like that. We have different thoughts in a day, different emotions, different things that may promote us to think a certain thing, do a certain thing, have a certain feeling, want to smoke, want to watch some content, want to play a video game. And if we let that, acknowledge that feeling, that emotion we're having, and then give it time to pass, it will. You know, big key is when you do have that feeling or that urge to not immediately act on it. Learn self-control, because also with addiction, with weed, it's about self-control. You've been smoking for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. You're not using self-control with weed. I want to get high. I'm going to get high. I don't have the control to be patient and let that urge kind of go away. We have learned to just act on every impulse, every feeling that we have. Hold on. So that self-control almost comes in 2 stages. The first stage, self-control, is learning to control our emotions. When we feel anxiety, feel that stress, feel that anger, feel that sadness, to not be so influenced by it. Recognize it's a normal emotion. I'm human. What caused me to feel that way? What's causing this feeling? Acknowledge that and don't let it overcome you. And the second self-control is we have to learn to not treat that emotion with the outside source, said alcohol, weed, porn, video games, whatever your choice of vice is. And that really is the key to staying sober. And the longer you master that, the longer you stick with it, the easier it becomes. And your success is a reason for you to stay on that path. Because the longer you do something, the more successful you are. You almost want to prove to yourself, or not prove to yourself, but you have created something or done something that maybe something you thought you could not have done, or is, a very strong feat that you didn't imagine. You've put yourself on another level. You have higher expectations of yourself, which that's going to again promote you to stay on a path of sobriety. And again, the longer you're on that sobriety, the easier it gets. It's like the longer you smoke, the more you're going to get addicted. So the more you do anything, whether it's good or bad, it's going to get easier. So choose whether you want to be addicted and succumb to weed, and that'd be easy, or choose whether you want to not be so influenced by every emotion and act on it by succumbing to, like I said, alcohol, weed, etc. So, there was just a little motivation, because yesterday I was feeling, with this channel, again, some days I don't get urges, anymore. I don't get strong urges to smoke weed, but I may get thoughts that am I just on my own soapbox? Is it really a big deal? Is weed a big issue? And and those days are fewer, but still have them. And then days where I'm proud of myself. Quitting weed for me was extremely hard. Despite what people say, they say, "Oh, it's not a big deal. Just quit smoking." Yeah, say it to the alcoholic or to the gambler, to anybody else who choose to be succumb to any vice. It was hard for me. I could not imagine myself not being a weed head and cutting that out by the time I turned 40. I'm not 40 yet, I'm almost, but I'm past weed, and I'm so proud of myself. And that acknowledgement of my success is reason
is a strong reason on why I will continue to stay sober from weed. And that just motivated me to, take it further and help those who do feel like me, because I know I'm not the only one. I know some other people. It's hard to quit weed. I know the struggle. So don't let nobody tell you, it's just weed. How about you suck somebody's ass? Because you got some that you're addicted to too. We all are addicted to something. So, yeah. So, until next time, guys, please like, subscribe, share. Most importantly, I want you to comment below. Comment below, please. Please, please. And until next time, guys, we are all in this together. Peace.
And one time for the dope. Let me please cut my throat. It's so smoky, yelling choke. Cause my mind is my ta. No more weed, still ha. I still so fly, ha. I still so fly.
What's up, guys? Chaz and Charlie, and today I'm going to discuss my biggest regret when I was smoking weed. My biggest regret. Sound like I said regret. So, started smoking weed when I was 16 years old, and just first off, that's my biggest regret. I don't. Weed itself, if we, introduce weed into our lives in our adult years when we are ill, or whether not even ill, if you want to just do it recreationally, I don't think there's a big issue with, using it every now and then, or using it as a something to let loose, or using it for, mild cases of anxiety, or to help you get some sleep from time to time. But the issue is when we introduce weed into our lives too early, and most of us do. Me, not saying all, but most people don't smoke weed for the first time when they're 29 years old. You're really one of the lucky ones if you do so, because although weed is not bad, it is bad when kids today are smoking weed before their brains are fully developed. They say that our brain is not fully developed until we are at age 25. And again, most of us start smoking weed way before the age of 25. So we've kind of changed our genetic makeup of our brain, or changed our mental structure that's still growing, still learning, still developing. So the issue when we start smoking weed at such a young age, we actually don't get to truly learn ourselves in our most natural state. Again, kids, we're still learning, we're figuring things out. Our mind is processing things around us. We're not at our full, we're not at our final stage of how our brains, how we're set to be, how we're going to handle issues, handle our anxiety, handle our stress. and we introduce weed into the picture before all those things have fully developed. And that's a real big issue, especially nowadays when we have with our young teens or Gen Z and thereafter. I think I call it Gen Alpha. I don't know. But they're real big on anxiety and depression and stress and all these feelings. And yet they're also very, very, very pro-weed. Now, this generation, they are very opposed to drinking, which is not bad. I don't think you definitely should not be drinking either when you're 16. But they have replaced alcohol with weed, and they're using weed at a very high, at a high level. Hold on, guys. So yeah, they're depressed, they have anxiety, like most all kids do. When you're going into the puberty years and you're in school and you're meeting girls or meeting boys and, meeting friends, and you're dealing with all of these adult-like emotions that you weren't, excuse them, these adult-like emotions that, we weren't used to when we were, 10 and 12, that comes with anxiety or stress. But we immediately shouldn't, run the weed. I think kids are smoking weed now because they're depressed, they're lonely, anxiety. Not saying we didn't smoke weed or some of us didn't do it for similar reasons. Most of us are just smoking weed recreationally. It wasn't a thing where we were like, oh, I'm depressed, I'm having anxiety, let me smoke some weed. It's, let's go get high. Which I think people are still like. I think people just hide behind the excuse, or it sounds better to them if they say I'm not doing it for fun. I'm doing it because, I have stress or anxiety or yada, yada, yada. But when you start this at a young age, you also have a higher chance of becoming addicted. Again, this channel is not created to just bash anybody who smokes weed, but specifically when you are addicted to weed. And studies show when you start smoking weed at a very young age, in your teens, when your brain is definitely not fully developed, you have a higher chance to be addicted. If you start smoking when you're 26, 27, not saying it still can't happen, but you have a lesser risk chance of becoming a everyday thing because your brain has gotten used to live life and handle things without the comfort of smoking weed every day. So it's dangerous that I'm not a war on drugs person, but I am I feel like drugs are heavily promoted to our youth today. And we can go from weed to psychedelics to pills. A lot of kids are dying now from overdoses from all types of prescription meds, which were not a thing when we were growing up. Again, I'm not condoning alcohol, and nobody should be drinking at 16, but nobody died from alcohol poisoning. Now, we did have drunk driving. That's been a thing. But nobody just, died from alcohol itself, to where that is a thing. Now, if you're on drugs, you can still kill yourself driving high. But not only that, just ingesting these drugs can kill you. Not saying not putting weed in the same category, because definitely weed, it's not going to kill you. But it can be a gateway to other drugs when the teens today have replaced alcohol with this drug culture, and we mask it under mental health, mental wellness. Something like mushrooms and psychedelics, they are disguised as, enlightening you, or giving you a better outlook on life, or explaining things, when you're really just high out your fucking mind. But with weed, like I said, we throw off our mental development when we introduce weed at a young age. And again, this whole anxiety culture, not saying people above the age of 30, 25 don't have anxiety, but that's not really a thing so much with us as it is with these younger kids. And when we're coupled with, like I said, the legalization of weed, to where weed is definitely way more acceptable than what it was even 5-10 years ago, you're going to have more kids smoking weed at a younger age than what they were 10 years ago. Which we're going to have a lot of kids with, messed up brain functions because they're introduced this substance into their daily life when their brains have not fully developed. So, we found the way to get weed when it was illegal. Like I said, I've never had an issue with, getting weed because it was illegal. So I never was like, only if weed was legal, I can get it easier. I think because weed is legal in many states, it's like also allowing people who probably wouldn't smoke weed to smoke weed, which we're creating more weed addicts. And people say, oh, you can't be a weed addict. That's not a thing. It's a thing. It's definitely a thing. So yeah, that's my biggest regret with weed. I wished I wouldn't have started smoking weed so early. I feel like that led to me needing it. So started when I was 16. By the time I was 18, I was smoking weed every single day. And I didn't stop that until I was in my mid-30s. So I think that would have been different had I not smoked weed until I was 25. Because again, you have taken on life to where you know how to handle daily stresses and anxiety without outside help. So you're not going to be introduced to weed. It's a lesser chance of you being introduced to weed and it becoming an immediate part of your everyday life, because you're not so disposed to just, falling for every single thing like you were when you were 16. So that's all I will say about that. My biggest regret with weed. I just shouldn't have started smoking early. Maybe I wouldn't have this channel if I smoked at 25, and maybe I'll be the one to say it's not a big deal. But I didn't. And I know the struggle. And it can be definitely a big deal depending on the person. So guys, let me know how you feel. Do you feel different? Does it not make a difference? Maybe just me. I don't think it's me. But what do you think? So until next time, guys, please like, subscribe, share. Most importantly, comment below. Please comment below. And until next time, guys, remember, we are all in this together. Peace.
He's puffing cloud, it's that choke the room. Eyes so red, they glow like the moon. A bag of green cradled like a prize, but his stomach twists like tangled ties. He rides the high, but takes the fall. Sweat drips down like his body's calm. He can't eat, he can't wind, lost in the haze of his greed grind. Oh, the blaze takes him high, then drops him low, spinning like a fan lost in the flow. The grass is greener on the other side, but he's stuck in the loop, no place to hide. He holds his gut and feels a sting, but still he chases what the joint might bring. Doctor says tries to shun, but deep inside he knows too clear the cost of smoke is getting near. All the blaze takes him high and drops him low, spinning like a fan lost in the flow. The grass is greener on the other side, but he's stuck in the loop, no place to hide. Thunder says, boy, put it away, but the echoes call at the end of the day. Caught in a cycle, can't deny, he's chasing clouds under a smoky sky. He starts to laugh when nothing's fun, running from the truth he tries to shun, but deep inside he knows too clear the cost of smoke is getting near. Getting near. No, 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 no. Doctor says, boy, put it away, but the echoes call at the end of the day. Caught in a cycle, can't deny, he's chasing clouds under a smoky sky. He starts to laugh when nothing's fun, running from the truth he tries to shun, but deep inside he knows too clear the cost of smoke is getting near.
What's up, guys? Chaz, Charlie, and today we are discussing what is life like without weed, or what does your life look like without weed? So you've been smoking weed for any time, for a long period of time, especially if you started smoking in your teen years. A lot of us don't know what a life looks like in our adult life without weed. You know, many times when we're trying to quit, or I'll say many times when we don't want to quit, we'll say, you know, I can live a normal, productive life without weed. You know, I can go to work, I can have relationships, I can have a business, I can do all these things with weed, so why would I quit weed when it makes my life better, or eases anxiety, or eases depression, or things like that? So we make our decision not to quit weed based on our life, on how we're used to our life with weed included. But if you're very successful, or you have a good life, productive life with weed, wouldn't you think you could be more productive without weed? And if you haven't quit weed for a set amount of time, then how do you truly know that? Now, I say that you can quit weed within 30 days. It takes 30 days to reset your brain, but you truly need a full year to really give full introspection on life and how it looks like without weed. You know, I've never seen anybody, and I'm saying it hasn't happened, that has quit weed for an extended amount of time and said, oh, my life is worse, or my life sucks now, and I just want to go back. Now, you may have moments in the beginning that we want to go back to what we know, what we're used to. But once we, get to that year mark and do a reflection on that year, most people realize they have an even better, more fulfilling life without weed, because we use weed to, again, help with anxiety, ease our emotions, help with our depression. But truly, if you have mastered life, or you're on the road to master life, you have to learn how to handle these things on your own. You know, life is going to always have anxiety. Life always have issues. Life is a up and down roller coaster sometimes. And when we get to a point where we need an outside source like weed or alcohol or other drugs just to combat that, it tends to become a crutch for us and not allow us to live our most productive life or our life with the most mental clarity. So many of us don't even know what life even looks like without weed. So we really can't truly say life is better with weed. Again, like I said, if we've been smoking since you were 18, I started weed when I was 16 years old, and I pretty much smoked until my mid-30s. So the majority of all of my adult life, since I was 16, I only knew life with weed. Hold on, guys. Yeah, so smoking from 16 to your 30s, I truly didn't know a life without weed. So if that's all you know, your mind is going to tell you, oh, life is better with this said thing because I'm used to it. Just the same with anything, like, whether you are alcoholic or you've been on porn or any of these vices, if you've been doing it for so long and pretty much your mind has developed while on these said vices, you're going to think that life is better with these said things. But again, we don't truly know what a life looks like outside of that unless we go, I'm going to say, a full year not on these vices, not smoking weed. So, and then we'll also try to, say life isn't better because we don't want to go through the period of the withdrawals, of the feeling low, of the feeling anxious. Because if you've been smoking for 10 plus years, or even 2 or 3 plus years, it may suck the first month. It may suck the first few months. I think by a few months you should get over it. But when you devote that full year, you truly, get it out of your system and develop a new train of thought outside of doing something you were used to doing every single day for how many ever amount of years. But yeah, life might not be better in the beginning because our bodies are trying to reject something new because we're not used to it. We want to resort back to what we know or what we're used to. So yeah, it may suck in the beginning, but when you look back and you actually take that, I say a full year to not smoke weed, the life is going to look better. Again, if you can start a business, if you can go to a job, if you can be productive, if you can do all these things, while you're on weed, what could you do if you're not on weed? And you're not going to tell me that I'm better when I'm on weed. That's not a thing. We, like I said, want to fool ourselves, and it may be easier handling stress for a period of time while you're on weed, but the longer you smoke, it kind of really presents its own set of issues because in the beginning we may be helping you with your anxiety, but if you smoke for a long period of time, you need weed just to wake up, just to talk to people. We need weed just to live a normal day-to-day life outside of just using to handle these moments of anxiety. So the longer you use it, it has really creeped into other areas of your life besides anxiety. You need weed just to wake up, which shouldn't be an anxiety moment here. The longer I smoked, I got anxiety when my package got low and I may have not had a connect to, get my next stash. So I'm anxiety, having that, when am I going to get the next? So the longer you smoke weed itself actually creates its own anxiety within itself. So you're not a better person on weed. So, but you won't know that unless, again, you go a full year and find out a new part of yourself that's sober, that has a clear mind. And then I think we can make a full we can make a full developed decision based on our evidence to say, okay, I've known myself on weed for this long, and now I know myself while I'm not on weed for a set amount of time, which person is better, which life is better, and make a decision based on that. Don't make a decision just based on because you smoke weed your whole life and that's what you know. Your body's gonna, if you smoke crack your whole life, your body's gonna say, do that because that's what I know. So yeah, so that was my discussion for today. So what do you guys feel? Are you the same without weed or with weed? Are you better with weed? Or do you feel like after you have smoked for, not smoked for a year, life is better? Are you contemplating and you say, will it be better? It might not be better for the first month or the first 2 weeks or the first week, but after that, I guarantee you life will be better. So till next time, guys, please like, subscribe, share. Most importantly, comment below. And remember, we are all in this together. Peace. And he's just pulling his ass off. What's up, guys? Chaz and Charlie. Today we are discussing, I don't believe my doctors knew I had CHS. So in the last 10 years, this has been a relatively new discovery with people who either smoke weed or quit weed. I've heard, okay, and first of all, what is CHS? It is cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, where basically you either due to you smoking a lot of weed or quitting weed from smoking a lot of weed, your basically your wiring in your brain is in a disconnect with the wiring that controls your esophagus, making your throat close up, making it tighten up to where you regurgitate and either feel like you're fit to throw up or you actually throw up, whether mild or uncontrollably. So this is a thing that a lot of people who smoke weed a lot actually go through, and it's not until really recent discovery till doctors have realized, it's actually a thing. So it could have been going on for years. I mean, as in like a long time since the beginning of weed, but doctors are just really becoming aware of it in recent history. So, if you smoke a lot of weed and you go through bouts of nauseous or vomiting, Charlie, where do you want to go? You probably have CHS because, people do tend to smoke weed if they have an illness that it may help with vomiting or feeling sick. If you have like an autoimmune or cancer, you smoke weed sometimes, help out your queasiness. So, what about when you're smoking weed and it's actually making you queasy? Which that's kind of defeating the purpose. And sometimes it's hard for people to actually quit, weed even with that because they're still so used to smoking weed. Charlie, stop pulling. I'm going to stop walking, Charlie. I'm going to stop filming and walking, Charlie, because you guys don't know, dogs get on my nerves. They require too much. But anyway, so first of all, some people go through CHS. Some people don't have it at all. Some people have it a light case, and some people have a very severe case. I myself, I would say, was on the very light side, and I didn't realize I even had CHS until after years, really down the line, close to when I was going to quit. So my battle when I was in high school. I think it was my junior, could have been senior year. At that point, I was pretty much smoking weed every day. And I remember it being specifically Thanksgiving. I started like throwing my food up. I couldn't keep any food down. I would eat halfway through my meal. Just how, Google describes it as a tightening of the esophagus. If it did feel like the pipe where my food was going down very tight, it wouldn't go down, it would come back up, and in turn, I would throw up. So I ended up going to the doctor, and they couldn't really determine what was causing the issue. Actually, I was diagnosed with what they call histoplasmosis, which is basically a bird poop disease. Typically, people do get that particular from like bird poop or birds. But when I look back at the symptoms of today of histoplasmosis, it has like night sweats, chills, almost flu-like symptoms, which I had none of those. The symptom was I couldn't hold my food down and I would throw up. So looking back, I'm like, I didn't have histoplasmosis. I had damn CHS. And I remember my doctor told me, well, he asked me, he came back. Of course, I was under the age of 18, so I was a minor. So he came back and, and asked me like, I know you're young and, kids hang out, you drink, possibly smoke. He specifically leaned towards smoking weed. And I'm going to say probably because, of course, they did all kind of blood work. And, of course, they saw I had all kind of THC and weed in my system. I guess at the time I was young and dumb. I didn't really put that to mind. I didn't realize that, I couldn't lie about not smoking because clearly weed was in my blood system. But whatever the case, he was like, I know y'all kids tend to pass the blunt around. And I'm like, what are you talking about, sir? And he was like, sometimes you can pass like a virus or something, from, passing germs around. Basically, I don't know if he was leaning towards me having CHS and just trying to figure it out, or was he thinking maybe I had contracted some kind of virus or flu or cold from like somebody through smoking. Whatever the case, I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't smoke weed. So for him, that was a no-go. And I think back, maybe I could have been a breakthrough on them, because that was like over 20 years ago. I could have been a breakthrough on the study for CHS. Maybe they were trying to, and I blocked them research because I would not tell the truth about me smoking weed. Because a lot of times now they say doctors tend to misdiagnose, like I was, because they're not even testing for CHS. They're not even thinking that it's a possibility. So, again, it's fairly new in the medical system. So, after they, what I would consider now, misdiagnosed me with histoplasmosis, they gave me prednisone, which is a steroid. So they actually did clear it up. I actually did, stop throwing up after a week or two. So, whatever they did worked. But me looking back in hindsight, I don't think I had what they diagnosed me with. I feel like I clearly had CHS. And there were, like, other moments, I'm going to say less than a handful of moments where I would drive to work and I would have definitely had smoked some weed before I left the house. And I definitely was smoking weed every day. I would get this immediate urge. I would have to throw up. So about 3 times I pulled over and threw up before I went to work. Which was gross, might I say. Because, I had some gum with me, but I should have just stopped and bought a toothbrush from somewhere and brushed my damn teeth. But anyway, that happened, and since it wasn't a reoccurring or constant thing, I didn't really correlate CHS being a thing in that either. But looking back, I say that probably was a light case of CHS. And then you have some people that have said, and I believe them, that they went through CHS after they quit weed. And I find that interesting because, people say a big reason why they say weed is not addictive, they'll say that there's no losing track of my words. There's no withdrawal symptoms from quitting weed, like you have when you're, quitting a narcotic or even alcohol. You have, of course, night sweats, vomiting, yada yada yada. With weed, it is typically just irritability, and you get over those within, a month or so. But some people actually say that they experience CHS after they have quit, which, like I said, to say that weed doesn't have any withdrawal symptoms is a lie. Now, like I said, it may have less than your narcotics. It definitely does. They're not as severe, but they're still there. And apparently for some people, CHS, vomiting, is one withdrawal symptom that people really don't discuss. So I was lucky that I didn't have a long or severe battle with CHS, but I do sympathize for those who are going through that, and some who may be in the case either, it's like 3 cats in this rental car. People who either don't want to quit or have an issue with quitting and they're still smoking. Maybe you can say they have a problem, they're addicted. I would say so. Or people who don't even know that the reason they're throwing up, they're not even correlating it to that weedies. So if you are experiencing issues of nausea, vomiting, it is a great case or a high probability that you do have CHS. I've also heard that some people experience these things more when they're vaping weed or doing oils versus smoking. A lot of these, legal states with this lab created or lab grown weed. So I will be aware of that as well. So yeah. So I just wanted to hop on here and briefly discuss my battle with CHS. Really, I'm going to call it my battle of my experience with what I think was CHS. And yeah, I just want to open the conversation because it's not talked about enough amongst our community. It's not talked about enough amongst the medical community. And it's definitely a thing. So, guys, like, subscribe, share. Most importantly, comment below. And remember, we are all in this together. Peace.
Empty ashtrays and hollow highs, watching life pass by my eyes. Used to think it calmed my mind, now it's time to leave behind. Candles flicker in the night, chasing dreams in faded light. Promises I broke before, swear I won't come back for more. I'm breaking free from the haze, no more lost in a purple daze. Finding strength in sober ways, step by step I part the maze. Morning light on my tired face, new beginnings, a fresh embrace. Loving me for who I am, no more hiding in the sham. I'll be steady and so clear, breaking free from the haze, no more lost in a purple daze, finding strength in sober ways, step by step I part the maze. Oh, 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 oh. I'm breaking free from the haze, no more lost in a purple daze, finding strength in sober ways, step by step I part the maze.
What's up, guys? This is very impromptu. I don't even have a topic of conversation for today. Of course, obviously, I'm not walking Charlie because I'm headed to do some rock climbing with my kids. So they're in the other car trailing me. That's why it's quiet. So yeah, it's a little different today. No Charlie, no walk. But I just want to hop on here and just talk about weed addiction. So this is very impromptu. There's no script, no topic. I'm just going with the flow. What comes to my head about the conversation? So I guess me and my wife, we discussed, okay, we're approaching our 10-year anniversary, and we're going to Colorado in March. And, you know, I discussed with her, because at one point in time, me and my wife, we did, she smoked at one point too, and she quit or stopped because she was pregnant and just never really went back because I quit. But anyway, I asked her, do you feel like, because I've said on this channel many times that I don't think weed itself is a big issue. I don't think that, like, you're wrong if you smoke any weed, or if you smoke weed occasionally. The issue is when it becomes addictive and you feel like you need it every day to survive. So through my addiction, my thing with her is I don't want you to feel like that you can't occasionally enjoy some weed because of my own sobriety journey. And me mentally going back and forth in my head, I say, this is, when you truly conquer something, is conquering that you quit something and you never go back, or you quit something and then you can actually partake in it and not choose to go down that same cycle of addiction. I mean, I think it's different depending on what's your vice of choice. If you were on heroin or cocaine or meth or anything to that nature, that I would not recommend that. I wouldn't. If you were an alcoholic, I wouldn't recommend that. I'm going to say, depending on your mental state with weed, I probably wouldn't do that either. But there are cases where people have quit as in they were once addicted, but they, went back and, smoked or something. and they didn't go back into the cycle of addiction. Some people actually even said they didn't like it when they went back. It turned them off. It's because they had a new mindset about the whole thing. So I have no urge to smoke weed at this point in my life. I've been sober from weed for 2 years. I don't have moments where like, oh, I wish I had a blunt right now. I actually sometimes wish I had a cigarette, and I wouldn't even like my relationship with cigarettes, of course, was not near as long as with weed. But I mean, when I see somebody smoking a cigarette, I say, oh, that would be nice. But not with weed, maybe because I went through this cycle of dependence on weed. It's just a turn off to even be, it intertwined in my life. But even when I quit, I said I was going to quit for a year, and then I was going to smoke on my birthday. That was my original plan. I was going to smoke on my birthday. And my birthday came, and I didn't want to smoke. And I also had created this channel here, so I also felt like, I don't want to be a hypocrite. And it's not really a hypocrite because I don't feel like, again, me partaking for a celebration isn't the same thing as me using weed to cope throughout the day or the day. But just still, the idea of just smoking was kind of a turn off to me. But I'm like, is it a turn off because I'm afraid I might go back? Or is it a turn off because it doesn't have the same appeal as it once did? I think more so it doesn't have the same appeal as it once did. But all that being said, we're going to Colorado. This crazy ass car. People drive crazy. Be safe out there with drivers. Like, you ain't got nowhere to fucking be. With all that being said, we're going to Colorado, and I told her, if you want to have an edible, it's not gonna be a big deal. I might have one too, because also, and I think specifically an edible, I'm most likely not going to actually smoke, because first of all, when we go on vacation, or any type of if we go on vacation, it's a celebration. Who wants to go on vacation? Not saying I need to go smoke weed, but I mean, I definitely will be drinking on this trip. But I mean, if we're in Colorado, she wants to do an edible. She can do it, and I'll perhaps join in I'll join in with her. So my view on edibles, my form of smoking was smoking. My form of intake of weed was smoking. I was not a fan of edibles. Actually, my first few times with edibles, either the people didn't make it right, or it was just some bad weed they used. I didn't feel anything. I didn't think it was that big a deal. But towards the end of my stint with weed, my wife, her friend's sister, she made edibles. Not only were they extremely tasty, they taste good. They were like these. She made these cheesecake chocolate brownies and these strawberry cheesecake brownies. I mean, they were tasty. They were tasty. They were very potent. The high hit me like it hit me when I was 16, smoking for my first time. I'm like, this is intense. It was so intense that I was like paranoid one time we did it. I'm like, I'm actually too high. As weird as that sounds for me, who was a pro smoker. Like so, but it did take a long time to kick in. It took like an hour or two to kick in. So I feel like it's hard to get addicted to edibles like that. It's because, smoking, the high is more. People are still driving crazy. The high is more immediate. So you smoke because I want to get high in the next 10 minutes. And usually, if you're addicted, that's the best form of it to quickly achieve your high. So I do think it's harder to get addicted to edibles because, it takes 1-2 hours to get the high. That's about the time I got high. I didn't forget about what I was anxious or depressed about. That take too long. So I'm probably, if I do it, I'll do it in a form that I did not become addicted to. But, and I'll let you guys know, because the day that I partake in weed, again, if I smoke or take an edible, I want to share it with you guys as a journey, as a story. I want to be very transparent about me and weed. If I smoke, if I do anything, I will let you guys know how I feel, how I felt afterwards. Where do I stand with it? I feel like it's almost like an experiment to let you guys know how it feels to go back to weed after your sobriety. If you feel like you can't do it, then don't do it. I wouldn't. If we weren't going on vacation, I wouldn't do it probably. We're in Colorado, so why not? Then I was looking up things to do in Colorado. They got like this Church of Cannabis. It's another name of where they do like light shows and it's like an old church. It's kind of a lot of God worship. I'm like, this is slightly pagan and evil, but I just want to get high. I don't want to worship the weed gods. Or maybe we are doing it, we don't know it. Who knows? But yeah, so that was one of my thoughts this week on my journey with addiction, weed addiction. And yeah, so like I said, pretty random this week, not really a topic, just a thought of what I had this week, my plan in March when I go on my 10-year anniversary vacation. And I'll let you guys know if I partake, how I feel. But let me know, have you guys had a similar experience, or have you went back to weed after a year or two of sobriety, and how did it feel? Did you go back to addiction, or did you didn't like it, or was it just Let me know. So until next time, guys, please like, subscribe, share. Most importantly, comment below. And remember, we are all in this together. Peace.
Lit the last J, flick the ash away. Green haze days, now they fade away. Lost in the smoke, but I found new hope. No more cloud nine, now it's grind time. Dope, used to breathe trees, now I live free. Clearing my mind, got no time for weed. Focused on my hustle, mind in the muscle. Breaking all the chains, feel the brain, there's no struggle. Woke up fresh, lungs feeling blessed. No more stress, clearer thoughts expressed. Dollars I save, life's an upgraded wave. Green out the door, now I crave much more. Lit the last J, flick the ash away. Green haze days, now they fade away. Lost in the smoke, but I found new hope. No more cloud nine, now it's grind time. Dope, used to breathe trees, now I live free. Clearing my mind, got no time for weed. Focused on my hustle, mind in the muscle. Breaking all the chains, feel the brain, gains no struggle. Mind on the rise, reaching for the skies. No more red eyes, goals I visualize. Beat the old vice, life like paradise. Feeling so nice, a new sober life. Used to breathe trees, now I live free. Clearing my mind, got no time for weed. Focused on my hustle, mind in the muscle, breaking all the chains, feel the brain gaze will struggle. There's no struggle. There's no struggle. Mind on the rise, reaching for the skies. No more red eyes, cause I visualize PPO vice, life like paradise. Feeling so nice, a new sober life.
What's up, guys? Chaz and Charlie, and today we are discussing why is weed so easy to quit, yet so hard to quit. Now, cannabis being on the easier scale of drugs to quit if you're trying to quit, but for some reason it's one of the hardest things to quit. You know, they say things like alcohol and narcotics are harder to quit because they're physically dependent, but although weed, on the other hand, is only either not addictive, or if it is addictive, it's just mentally addictive, so therefore it's easier to quit. And I beg to differ, because first of all, this whole differentiation, if I'm saying the word correctly, on cannabis, whether it's mentally or physically addictive. First of all, we like to separate our mental from our physical. You know, we do know, some narcotics, when people go to rehab, they have to continue on the narcotics, at doses, winging themselves off because their body has gotten used to actually being on the drugs. I get that. Whereas weed, you can't just go cold turkey. There are no extreme physical side effects of, quitting marijuana. You don't have to slowly wean yourself off, although that could be helpful in, not just going from 0 to 100. You don't have to do that in order for your body to survive. So I get that. For those reasons, we can say narcotics are definitely, and even alcohol are definitely more physically addictive than cannabis. But the idea of it being just mental and not physical, I say that everything starts mental. Before alcohol and narcotics become a physical addiction, it definitely starts as a mental addiction. So we play that down, as if that's, not a big issue. So something like weed, where, you don't have to, your body doesn't need it to survive, why do so many people fail at quitting? Now, we either got people who say, like myself, who say, or said at one point, I could quit anytime I want to, I'm just choosing not to quit right now. Really, you're really selling yourself short, But when it comes time to actually quit, then, you either don't commit fully or sabotage yourself into going right back into your cycle of addiction. But I think that weed is one of the easier drugs to, one of the hardest drugs to quit, because it's not, quote unquote, it doesn't send your life into a spiral. I made a video earlier this week about weed and the baby boomer parent, and a lot of our parents, like mine, many others, parents that grew up, in the 70s movement, who went on to get their regular jobs and sent us to college and parent us, maintain us, but still failed at nurturing us. So in turn, they still, weren't the best parent. So, but because they did the bare minimum, or did what they felt was, their job, they don't actually either they don't make a change in their later life, or they don't see their past parenting as a big issue because we turned out, quote unquote, okay. So it's easier for a parent who was like a crackhead to know, okay, I was a crackhead, I was wrong, let me try to do better. Sometimes they'll try to do better by the grandchildren. Or you're a parent that was absent, like there's no getting past that. I was not there, I went weeks, months, years without seeing you, I was a bad parent, let me try to do better. I mean, some don't, but when you get to that extreme, it's hard not to deny it was an issue and some change needed to be made. So the same thing with weed. They'll say, I don't think weed is addictive, or if it is addictive, it's not like me being on alcohol, seeing all the harm alcohol has caused. Yeah, true, but to deny that there's still not some issues with alcohol as well. But because there are not extreme, because we can, quote unquote, maintain life and not, and not go over the edge, we don't see it as a true issue, therefore making it much harder to quit than drugs that send us down this more darker spiral, this darker spiral to despair. So weed is a much harder drug to quit sometimes. Not for all. Some people, can quit anytime. It does differ. I must say it does differ from person to person. It's, people choose their vice of choice. Some people can, just quit drinking like that, and some cannot. Some people can, quit weed like that, and some cannot. But I do find it being either the same percentage having an issue quit with weed or not being able to quit, simply because it appears to not be on the same level as other drugs or hard narcotics. So, if you're trying to quit, we shouldn't justify our addiction based on either outside assumptions or social stigmas. Weed is so acceptable now, and you will hear many people saying it's not a big deal, it's not an issue. What's wrong with smoking a little weed after work? That will in turn make us feel like, okay, do I really have an issue? You kind of second guess your own self based on the social acceptance of weed, because whether we like to admit or not, weed right now has the highest acceptance rate of it at any time in our history. You can now get a job and, take a drug test and show up positive for marijuana and still get hired. I know even I would say 8 years ago, as long as 8 years ago, when I got a second job and my system definitely tested positive for weed. It was funny because I took a drug test and I'm like, oh, well, I can just put this in a can. And it was like a instantaneous, immediate drug test. And I peed, gave her a pee, and the girl was like, shit, you smoke a whole lot of damn weed. Okay, you can sit down. And I'm like, And I ended up getting a job. So I'm like, okay. But many jobs you find now are not even drug testing anymore. And like I said, we got stars, we got media that's promoting weed. We have, of course, the legalization of marijuana. So it's a much more socially norm thing now than what it was. So, in that case, it's also making it harder to quit. It's more taboo now to smoke a cigarette than to smoke a joint. So, it's hard even really coming to a conclusion that, weed is bad for me. Am I just being a big wimp and making a big deal about this? But weed is easy to quit, but very hard to quit. But if you're trying to quit, you can quit just like that. But we have to make our mind up that we want to change. recognize that weed is not for us, not base our decision based on our outside influences. Come up with a plan to replace something in your life with weed. Don't just take weed out, add something in to replace it with, so you don't get this free blank space to where you have a higher chance of going back. But once you do these things before you actually quit, you have a higher chance of staying sober or staying on your path of sobriety from weed. So again, it's easy to quit, hard to quit. But if you're on the path thinking, okay, I have an issue, I want to make a change, that's your first most important step. And once you do that, then you're on the path to staying, free or sober from weed. So what do you feel? Are you on your path and you say, it was easier, it was a breeze? Which once I did actually finally quit weed, it was easy for me. The issue was my attempts at trying to quit. I never fully made an effort to quit. I would quit with the pretense that I'm going to smoke again at some point in life, not just truly quitting weed and not looking back. Once I made the decision, it was easy and I didn't go back, but I had to make these decisions in my head before I actually quit. A lot of times we'll just blindly quit, kind of in the back of our mind, still intending to smoke in a week or a month, or you get sober for a month or two, and you almost get proud of yourself and reward yourself with weed. We can't have that outlook if we're trying to truly quit. We have to truly change ourselves and say, this will not be a part of my identity anymore. But yeah, so just want to hop on here to say that. And if you have any more input on it, let me know. Until next time, guys, please like, subscribe, share. Most importantly, comment below. Remember, guys, we are all in this together. Peace.
There was a boy named John who met a girl named Mary. John had it all, but he was still depressed. And Mary was different from all the other girls. She actually listened to him. She encouraged him and lifted him up. But the thing is, she would not commit to him. And John became addicted to her. He tried to leave her alone, but he kept running back. But one day, he got fed up. He decided that Mary took too much of his life without getting anything in return. And he met a new girl and pursued his ambitions. And as for Mary, she went on to capture many other men, and she still lives on.
What's up, guys? Chaz, Charlie. Today we are discussing a basic topic: how to poor squirrel. How to quit weed effectively. How to quit weed effectively. Now, I said, okay, am I beating a dead horse? Am I repeating myself, so on and so on? And yeah, and I'm like, Chaz, this channel doesn't even get like a whole lot of views. I don't think everybody's heard it. So yeah, I'm going to repeat myself constantly because this is the main point of this channel. And the key word is effectively, because, we can quit numerous times, but if we don't quit and be effective with it, then we'll just fall right back into our old ways. We can quit a job and go right back to it. We can quit a girlfriend and go right back to her. We can quit things all day, and if we don't truly effectively take on steps to not go back, we'll just find ourselves back in the same position. So I'm going to briefly go over these steps on how you would effectively quit weed. So a lot of this really going to be a lot of pre-work. The majority of the work is before you actually quit, because quitting takes a second to just not smoke and not buy no more weed. But what keeps us going back to buying the weed? Somebody's crazy ass dog. So hate dogs. And I have one, but I do hate dogs. So first thing is, let's accept we have a weed addiction, because weed, of all drugs, a lot of times we will, fool ourselves and say, I'm not addicted, or not admit to not being able to quit. We'll say, I can quit whenever I want to. I just don't want to quit right now. And we never actually quit weed. So first step is to admit that you have a weed addiction. Admit to yourself. Be straight up. Face the monkey in the room and don't just say, oh, weed is not addictive. I can quit if I want to. And truly, you are like head over heels in love with weed and you cannot quit. Second step is to decide what's keeping you addicted to weed, because maybe you started weed just as something to do with your friends. Maybe you just wanted to go to sleep one night. Maybe you just did it and and you really don't know why you did it, and you just was trying something. But after years, our reasoning can change. It can change from why we started smoking weed to why we continue to smoke weed. So do you smoke weed to combat everyday stress? Do you smoke weed to still continue to sleep? Do you smoke weed for depression, for anxiety? Do you smoke weed because you don't want to lose your appetite? There are many reasons why we continue to smoke weed every single day. So identify the reason on why you are continuing to actually smoke weed. Okay, once we do that, then we don't want to just quit weed, but we want to actually come up with something to replace weed with. If we just take weed out of our lives and don't replace it with anything positive, then if we have that void, that blank space in our life where weed once was, we may easily fall back into our cycle of addiction. But if we have something new, something fun, something exciting that's causing us to put our attention elsewhere, it's easier to stay on track when we're trying to stay sober or stay on this path of sobriety. So I would find you a hobby, whether it's exercise journey, whether it's a diet journey. Maybe you want to I don't know, you want to travel the world. I don't know what you may want to do, but something that you've been wanting to do for a long period of time, that now you have this free time, in not only in your day but in your headspace, that you can devote that to. It'll free your mind up from reverting back to the want or desire. Not saying that won't happen, but it may happen less or not as intense if we have something else to replace that with. Because if we have fell into the cycle of weed addiction, it's a chance we may have an addictive personality, which means we can become addicted to anything in our life, and that could be a good thing if it's something positive, something in your career where you're putting everyday consistent work towards, like you were with weed. You could use that addictive quality for your benefit. Now, okay, once we've done that, we've done a lot of pre-work. now we want to decide a day that we want to quit weed. It could, you know, you can just flush your stash down the toilet. I had my last stash. I just smoked it all. I always watch intervention and people who, go to rehab. I would probably myself just say, can I just at least shoot up my last stash before I go? Let me get my last fill. I also feel like if you get so loaded, it'll give you a bad last impression on it. If I smoke so much weed at the end, that may not work for everybody, but I mean, me personally, I just smoked all I had and just said, I'm done with it. So come up with a date that you want to smoke your last stash and commit to that. You can also have a sobriety party. If you don't trust yourself, add somebody in with your journey. If you have a significant other, a sibling, a friend, probably not nobody who also smokes weed, somebody who does not smoke weed, preferably, and let them hold you accountable. You can tell them, okay, next time I do smoke weed, if it's a person that may occasionally smoke weed but not addicted, you may say that, hey, next time, don't make it like, watch me and make sure I don't smoke. That can make you feel like a child, make you feel like an addict, and maybe that's not what we want to do. But like for me personally, my wife, who had stopped smoking before me, she was never fully addicted like I was, but she wasn't smoking weed. And I told her, the next time I smoke is going to be with you. So there was a truce between me and her. So I myself know the next time that I smoke weed, it has to be with her. If I smoke weed by myself, then, I've broken the truce between us. So a person that gave me incentive to stay on track, and knowing that next time I do partake in weed, it has to be with her. Self-consciously, she's still holding me accountable by me bringing somebody else in on my journey. Because in turn, even though they may not get on you for smoking, you yourself may not want to seem like a failure because you have invited someone else in on your journey. So it's optional. The first two things I mentioned, as far as in men who have an addiction issue, finding out the reason why you still smoke, thinking of a hobby to replace weed with, I don't think those things are optional. If you want to give yourself the best chances for not relapsing or staying on your journey, those things I think are mandatory. The whole accountability partner is not mandatory, but it definitely can help if you have that option with you. Maybe you're alone and you don't have help to do that. No big deal. But if you do, take advantage of it. Once we did these things, quitting is simple. It's just like that. Like I said, you can quit right now and, start back next week. That's what they call tolerance breaks, which tolerance breaks aren't good because, that's good if you just don't plan on quitting weed, which if you aren't, then why take a break from it? But the issue with tolerance breaks is we have no intention of fully quitting, and then when it comes time to actually, let's say I take a tea break and I'll not smoke for 2-3 weeks. Then I'll just reward myself for not smoking for 2 weeks and probably smoke a lot more weed than I was before that tea break. Some people maybe not, but people who have an issue and history of being addicted to weed, you probably just fall back into your old ways and increase them even more. So that may not be beneficial for a person who has fell into the cycle of being addicted to weed if you smoke weed every single day. So just be aware of that. So those 3 steps are crucial if you want to ensure your sobriety from marijuana. So if you guys have ideas, you have different tips, different steps that you've tried, I would love to know. I'm sure others would love to know. And remember, guys, we are all in this together. Like, subscribe, share. Most importantly, comment below. Until next time, peace.
Woke up in the morning haze, shadows from my old ways. Mirror shows a tired face, time to leave this endless chase. Clouds of smoke can't hold me down. Lost myself but now I'm found. Clarity in each new sound. Freedom's just around the town. Breaking free from habits long, walking roads where I belong. No more haze, my mind is strong. In this place I find my song. Nights were cold and days were blurred, voices whispered, never heard. Now the silence speaks in words. Through the noise, my voice emerged. Painful steps, but moving on. One by one, the chains are gone. Breathing deep, the new day's dawn. In this journey, I've grown strong. Breaking free from habits long. Where I belong. No more haze, my mind is strong. In this place I find my song. Free from habits long.